Tennis has seen its fair share of rivalries, but what happened at the US Open this year went far beyond sports. This wasn't just about two players exchanging heated words. It was about history, race, and the weight of an entire culture colliding on one court. When Taylor Townsend crushed Jeļena Ostapenko in straight sets, the crowd expected some frustration. What they didn't expect was a meltdown laced with insults that carried far more baggage than simple sore loser trash talk. Ostapenko didn't just accuse Taylor of lacking class. She took it further, questioning her education and even muttering a thinly veiled threat about what might happen outside the US. The audience gasped. Social media erupted. And suddenly, what should have been a routine post-match moment turned into a firestorm that reached every corner of the tennis world. Because this wasn't just a spat. It wasn't just salty words after a tough loss. It was a flashpoint that tapped into decades of coded language and dog whistles aimed at black women in tennis. From Serena Williams to Naomi Osaka, from Venus to Coco Gauff, every fan knew exactly what Ostapenko was really saying. And they weren't about to let it slide. And as the dust settled, something remarkable happened. Taylor Townsend didn't explode. She didn't match fire with fire. She responded with one of the coldest clapbacks ever delivered on a tennis court. And in that moment, the power shifted. What Ostapenko thought was an insult became the spark that ignited a movement. Taylor Townsend didn't just win that night. She dominated. In straight sets, 7-5, 6-1, she left Jeļena Ostapenko scrambling and out of answers. The scoreboard told the story of control, precision, and power. But the real drama didn't unfold until the final handshake. Instead of offering respect, Ostapenko snapped. She leaned in and spat venom, calling Taylor classless, uneducated, and even threatening. We'll see what happens outside the US. The crowd froze. This wasn't your average post-match bitterness. It carried an undertone that everyone could feel. In a sport where subtle language has been used to tear down black athletes for decades, her words struck like daggers. The gasp that rippled through the stadium wasn't just shock, it was recognition. Fans knew exactly what those words meant. And in that moment, the narrative shifted. Ostapenko wasn't just a sore loser, she had opened the door to something much bigger, much darker. Most players would have lashed out, but Taylor Townsend didn't flinch. In her post-match interview, she repeated Ostapenko's words with a calmness that made the insult even uglier. She didn't scream or rage. Instead, she dropped one of the coldest comebacks the sport has ever seen. I beat her in Canada, outside the US. I beat her in New York, outside the US. So, let's see what else she has to say. The delivery was surgical. No theatrics, no extra heat, just pure, undeniable fact. In one sentence, Taylor flipped the insult on its head and exposed the emptiness behind it. And while Ostapenko stormed off, Taylor looked unbothered, her poise turning the spotlight away from bitterness and onto her own strength. What Taylor didn't realize was that her calm dismissal wasn't just a personal win. It was about to become the centerpiece of an online storm. Within minutes, the clips hit Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Fans immediately clocked the undertones in Ostapenko's rant. Black Twitter especially was not having it. The comments poured in, "This isn't just trash talk, it's racist shade wrapped in tennis etiquette." Memes, threads, and receipts started flying. But this wasn't about one bad moment. This was about a pattern that stretched back decades. Serena Williams branded angry. Venus Williams called cold. Coco Gauff mocked as cocky. The playbook was all too familiar. Every time a black woman dared to be competitive, to show emotion, or to celebrate, the backlash followed. And Ostapenko's words fit that mold perfectly. The story had already grown beyond the court. This wasn't Townsend versus Ostapenko anymore. It was Taylor versus a system that had been waiting for someone to call it out. Then Naomi Osaka stepped in, and everything exploded again. Sitting in her press conference, Osaka didn't sugarcoat anything. She said, "It's one of the worst things you can say to a black tennis player in a majority-white sport." And she was right. Osaka reminded everyone that Taylor was not only smart and hardworking, she was the thing from what Ostapenko tried to paint her as. And then Osaka added fuel to the fire. She hinted that this wasn't the first time Ostapenko had crossed the line. "This isn't the craziest thing she said," Naomi admitted, "but it was the worst timing and the worst person you could ever say it to." It wasn't just defense, it was exposure. Osaka laid bare the reality that these weren't isolated words. They were part of a larger pattern of disrespect that players of color had faced for years. And with Naomi's voice behind Taylor's, the moment became undeniable. And just when it seemed the storm had peaked, the Williams name entered the conversation. Serena and Venus had lived this story for decades, Serena being vilified for showing emotion, while men smashing rackets were praised as passionate. Venus being labeled icy when she simply carried herself with composure. Every headline, every insult, they had been there before. Venus stepped up first. After her doubles match with Leylah Fernandez, she was asked about Taylor's situation. With her trademark elegance, she praised Taylor for handling the moment with grace, reminding everyone that her son would one day see how his mother carried herself. "She handled it amazing," Venus said. "She's a wonderful person, a great mom, and I hope she keeps going." It was more than support. It was a passing of the torch. In that instant, the weight of decades of coded criticism shifted. Taylor Townsend wasn't standing alone. She was standing on the foundation Serena and Venus had built. And that made the moment historic. If anyone thought the controversy would fade, they underestimated the internet. Within hours, fans dug up clip after clip of Ostapenko's past antics. Videos of her smashing rackets in frustration, screaming at umpires, and disrespecting opponents resurfaced everywhere. What had once been brushed off as fiery competitiveness now looked like a pattern of entitlement and tantrums. Fans didn't hold back. Comment sections lit up with reminders that this wasn't a one-time mistake. It was who Ostapenko had always been. Headlines started framing her reputation not as a Grand Slam champion, but as tennis's ultimate sore loser. And as those receipts piled up, the idea of her apology being a language mix-up became harder and harder to believe. Under pressure, Ostapenko finally addressed the scandal. On Instagram, she posted a carefully crafted note. She didn't mean education as an insult, she claimed, but rather as a reference to tennis etiquette. She insisted her words were lost in translation, apologized to anyone who felt offended, and promised to learn and grow. But Taylor wasn't playing into it. When reporters asked her about the apology, she shrugged. She hadn't even seen it. She was focused on her game. And then, with that same calm sharpness, she reminded everyone what really mattered. Representation is everything. I honor that by the way I carry myself, the way I speak, the way I act. In just a few words, Taylor flipped the script again. Ostapenko was stuck explaining herself, while Taylor stood tall as the face of composure and pride. Just when things felt like they were cooling down, Serena Williams gave fans something else to chew on. Retired or not, Serena knows how to stir the pot. She dropped a TikTok poking fun at Venus teaming up with Leylah Fernandez in doubles, pretending to be so happy for her sister with another partner. Playful or not, fans ate it up. To them, it was a wink from Serena, a reminder that even from the sidelines, she's watching every second of the US Open drama. The timing was perfect. While Ostapenko's name was drowning in negative press, Serena's playful shade reminded everyone that the Williams legacy was still deeply tied to the energy of the sport. And though she hadn't publicly addressed the Townsend drama, her presence loomed large over the entire moment. By now, it was clear. This wasn't just about Taylor Townsend and Jeļena Ostapenko. It was about a new generation of black women in tennis refusing to be silenced. Coco Gauff, Naomi Osaka, Madison Keys, Sloane Stephens, Alicia Parks, together, they represented a wave too strong to be dismissed with old stereotypes. When Ostapenko lashed out, she wasn't just taking a swing at Taylor, she was poking at an entire movement. And that's why the backlash was so fierce. Media outlets weren't calling it a spat anymore, they were calling it Ostapenko's downfall. The tantrums, the shade, the insults, they had finally caught up to her. And in their place, Taylor Townsend stood taller than ever. What started as a bitter exchange at the US Open ended as a cultural reckoning. Ostapenko thought she could drag Taylor down with insults, but instead, she exposed the very stereotypes tennis has been clinging to for decades. And Taylor, she flipped the script. Calm, sharp, unshaken. Naomi Osaka put history into perspective. Venus Williams offered elegance and support. Serena reminded everyone that her legacy still hovers over the sport. And Taylor Townsend proved that representation isn't just about showing up, it's about standing firm when the world is watching. Ostapenko's brand may now be forever tied to tantrums and shade, but Taylor's moment will be remembered as the day she carried the torch forward. And if you think this is the last time tennis will explode into headlines like this, think again. The next scandal, the next fight, the next cultural moment. It's already loading.